An autodidact and divergent thinker who was herself partially homeschooled, Zeba Khan approaches the education of her three children with out-of-the-box thinking. She believes that education is not only academic, but also functional, logical, and applicable. Beyond books and worksheets, Zeba enjoys teaching soft skills like critical thinking, public speaking, and social skills for life beyond class. So now we have Sister Zeba with skills to pay the bills.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome to the hottest talk today on homeschooling. I'd like to start right in with the skills to pay the bills, and we picked that title A because it rhymes, and B because when we think of academic success, it's very different from adult success. They're actually two different things. Academic success is a function of getting a high GPA. It's a function of educational recognition. My kid is a National Honor Society scholar. My kid is in this club, or my kid is in that club. Academic success is a matter of attaining credentials. I have a bachelor's degree, I have a master's degree, I have a PhD, and being able to perform well on tests. However, we know that academic success and adult success are not actually built from this same foundation. Science is telling us that we need EQ, because apparently people with degrees and high IQs can still be miserable and unhappy and get fired. Because if you don't know how to work with people, it really doesn't matter what degree that you have. Personality is a huge decider in adult success, not only from a career perspective, but also from an interpersonal perspective. You might be a brilliant PhD, but if no one can stand you, you probably won't get or stay married. EQ and personality are really, really important. And these are considered soft skills, but they're really critical nonetheless. Another area that standard academics typically overlook is what's called divergent thinking. Now, to diverge means to exit from a singular point. So it's the opposite of convergent thinking. So if in convergent thinking, a kid is given a multiple choice question, they're given lots of information, and from that information, they're meant to scale that down into one single right answer. Multiple choice test is a great idea, a great illustration of convergent thinking. Divergent thinking is where you take a single point and expand out from it. So if you ask an adult, the room is dark, how shall we light it? You might get one or two responses. Oh, turn on the lights or open the window. A kid might say, can we take off the ceiling? What if we start a fire? What kind of lights do we have? Do we have fairy lights? Can we use a flashlight? And so here you have just 5 solutions to one problem. Now in the real world, if somebody is a researcher and you go up to them and say, how do you cure cancer? You're not going to give them, here's a list. Is it A, B, or C? Please select the correct answer. In real life, we are given problems with no clear solutions, and divergent thinking is required to generate as many possibilities as possible before we can select which is the likeliest option going forward. So divergent thinking is something that's getting a lot of attention recently in the corporate arena, as well as areas of research, because it's not enough to have a master's degree if you really don't have any original ideas of your own. Now, another area that's a huge indicator of adult success is what's called executive function. Now, executive function is your ability to make decisions, analyze information, regulate your own emotions, and the processes that arise from the executive function are what are in our nasiya that Allah refers to in the Quran. These are all functions of the prefrontal cortex. This is the front of your brain that makes you, you, that decides what you will, what you won't, and what you want. And then everything that stems forth from that is considered part of your executive function. So now, let's look at adult success as compared to academic success. Instead of high GPA, we're looking to grow children with a high EQ. Instead of educational recognition, we now need to look at executive function. Instead of credentials, we need to look at knowledge and divergent thinking and convergent thinking. We now have a 50,000 feet strategic view of what else do we want to target in addition to standard academics. So let's look at emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is defined as the awareness of emotion, the utilization of emotion. I may be mad, but here's what I'm going to do with that. And the management and regulation of emotion. A great example of this is delayed gratification. Yeah, there he is. Apparently he wasn't able to do that. So some functions of good emotional intelligence are mindfulness, which is being aware of your situation at the moment and not reacting to it, but deciding based on it. There's, again, delayed gratification. Delayed gratification means that a child can withhold what they want now. So a toddler might want something now. They want the cookie now. They see it. They have to have it. But over time, we teach them, okay, cookie after dinner. And this is a very simple and very basic introduction to it. But delayed gratification is actually part of the Islamic character. We all want to have fun, but we're waiting until Jannah. And you may want to have a romance, but you'll wait until you're married. And you may want to have money, but you're not going to steal it. You're going to wait until you earn it. Delayed gratification is a huge part of sabr and good akhlaq. Now, another function of emotional intelligence is empathy, being able to understand and relate to the emotions of other people. Alina mentioned this. Writing and reading stories is a great way to find empathy, because as you read a story, your child has to exercise the part of the brain that imagines, oh, this just happened. I wonder what they must be feeling. And frustration tolerance. Frustration tolerance is a superpower. You are all sitting here in a very hot room, and most of you are on uncomfortable chairs. You are tolerating the frustration in exchange for the knowledge and benefit in the long term. But if you are unable to tolerate any sort of frustration, you might walk in and go, this conference is too hot, and then you walk out. And you might go to a job and say, this job is too hard, and then you walk out. And you go into a marriage and you're like, this marriage is too hard, and then you walk out. Frustration tolerance is a life skill. People have children, these children are too hard, and then they walk out. Frustration tolerance is a critical adult skill. When children are able to regulate themselves, they perform better. When they perform better, they are skilled at managing other people, and that success is scaled upwards. So good emotional intelligence is critical to developing leadership skills and then applying those leadership skills in the realm of organizational change. And organizational change is not limited to corporate life. I'm not talking about your child being a CEO. I'm talking about your child being a leader in their community, a change maker in their social circle, a positive influence in their network of friends. You cannot give what you do not have. If you do not have emotional stability and the ability to understand, utilize, and regulate your own emotions, then you do not have the tools to help other people do the same. Now, let's look at executive function skills. This is part of the prefrontal cortex. These are the skills of the nasiya. These include a lot, like estimating and visualizing outcomes. Oh, if I do A, then perhaps B and C may occur. If C occurs, my options are D, but if that's not there, perhaps I need to consider F. This is an example of visualizing outcomes. Analyzing sight, sound, and physical sensory information is important too. So sports are a great way to help kids develop their executive function, because the more often they're able to make analytical judgments, even if the analysis is of the speed of a ball or the force of a punch, they are still exercising the skills related to analysis. And perceiving and estimating time, distance, and force, again, is also part of this, because to be able to estimate is a subset of being able to analyze and make educated assumptions about. The executive function also includes anticipating consequences. If I speed, I may get a ticket. If I get a ticket, I'll have to pay a fine. If I pay a fine, then I won't have money to go to the movies. If I don't go to the movies, my wife will be mad at me. And if my wife is mad at me, then the food will be burnt, and then the food. So you can translate things forward, but the ability to decide, if I put my pawn here, then he'll take my pawn. And if he takes my pawn with his knight, I'll pull the bishop out from here. But then that leaves my rook vulnerable in the back row. This is a very straightforward example of one way that chess helps children exercise their executive function. It also allows for evaluating possible outcomes of different strategies. Well, if my friend stepped on my foot, I could never talk to her again, or I could tell her she stepped on my foot, and maybe she'll say sorry, or maybe she'll say, well, you shouldn't have put your foot there. But this sort of line of thinking is part of understanding human beings. It's part of understanding your colleagues and your family members and everyone around you. And this also includes choosing actions based on the likelihood of positive outcomes. Yes, you could punch the police officer for giving you a ticket. Is that a great idea? Is that likely to lead to a positive outcome? No, and yet there are people who do that, right? There are people who take actions that seem so obviously like, what were you thinking? Did you not analyze your possible options, visualize the results of those possibilities, and then make a decision for the best possible outcome? No, apparently you were underutilizing your executive function as an adult. Adults, we do wacky things all the time. Another subset of the executive function is choosing the most appropriate action based on social expectations and norms. Your brain teaches you how to be a decent and good person. Your brain can help you understand what other people may be expecting out of an interaction. And another really important part of the executive function is performing the tasks necessary to carry out decisions. When your children are home with you all day, it's hard to resist the temptation to tell them what they're going to do and when, and what clothes they need to wear, and what they should prepare for lunch, and if they do it this way versus that way, it'll be faster. But you take away the opportunity for them to perform the tasks necessary to accomplish a goal. Low-risk situations, such as playing board games where there's no real kingdom at stake, and then no one will really die if you put your pawn there. These are important places where children exercise executive function. And allowing your children the freedom to plan terrible ideas that you know will fail are part of teaching them frustration tolerance and evaluating their plans going forward. Failure is necessary for developing character. If your child never fails, they will never know how to bounce back. They will never know how to recover from failure. They will simply be destroyed by failure and never attempt anything again. Now, let's look at divergent and convergent thinking, because they're two halves of the same process. In divergent, a single question, like, how can you light a room, can lead to many different ideas. Here's a cancer cell. How can we isolate it? Let's generate many ideas. Here's a river that no one can ride their horse across. How can we get across? Let's generate many different ideas. Now, let's say we're trying to cross a river and someone's like, well, we could make a bridge, we could make a boat, we could stack stones from here to here, we could train the fish, There'll be a lot of crazy ideas. And then convergent thinking is the logical process through which you evaluate these ideas and oh, I don't think we have the power to communicate with fish yet, so let's take that one off the table. Or I don't think we have the time to build a boat, so let's take that off the table. It gives you the power to sort through and select things based on what could actually work. So both divergent and convergent thinking are extremely important, but convergent thinking gets way more time in a traditional academic setting. I have 10 minutes? Okay, thank you. If you are given a multiple choice test where you are expected to find the answer based on the paragraph that you just read, that is convergent thinking. If you are filling out a worksheet on reading comprehension, asking what color shirt was she wearing, that is convergent thinking. So in school, we get lots of opportunities to develop convergent thinking. Very few to develop divergent thinking. And again, here's just a rundown of where things go where, and I'm going to go faster on some slides just so I make it through in time. Divergent thinking is characterized by originality and novelty of ideas, the fluency of ideation. How quickly can you generate creative ideas? How easily can you throw solutions at a problem? Flexibility and adaptability. Well, that didn't work. I'll try this. My solution failed. I've got 3 more. So those are all functions of divergent thinking. The ability to elaborate on something is important too, because if I say, picture a man wearing a blue shirt and then describe him, if you are a primarily convergent thinker, you might say, well, he's a man and he's wearing a blue shirt. Whereas if you're divergent, you're like, he's sitting on a chair. The chair is in a room. It's very hot. It was in a homeschooling conference, but the food was good. So creativity and ideation is part of divergent thinking, and we need this to problem solve. Convergent thinking, again, is logic and reasoning, subject knowledge and expertise, knowing a lot about many things, being able to focus and filter out non-essential information, non-essential things that are happening to your task to prioritize, and intelligence and testing aptitude are part of convergent thinking. Now, divergent doesn't get a lot of time in classroom because it takes a lot of energy to incorporate things that use divergent thought. It's not easily measurable. If there are 15 right answers to a problem, how do you mark, did they get it A or B? You can't do that. It's quite difficult. It's difficult to grade. And it's also difficult to allow for the possibility that in divergent thinking, the kids will give 10 ideas and they'll all fail. And they may have succeeded at divergent thinking even if they failed at accomplishing the task. So school is success-oriented. Everything about school is meant to get you towards success. And success is based on, did you tick the right box or did you not? Did your presentation go on the right size cardboard or did it not? Were the margins on the side of the paper the right side or the wrong side? And as somebody who went to school overseas for a while, the idea of getting a good grade on your summer essay was the ability to copy the summer essay from a book, word for word, and write it down on a piece of paper using red pen on the margins of 3 centimeters and black. Has anybody ever studied abroad and done that? Rewritten essays that didn't come from your summer or your mind, but from someone else's summer and someone, like by the seaside in England, and we took a train to get there, and it was very lovely, and Nan made us cakes. This is a terrible, this is a failure of some education systems. Okay, all right, so succeeding on standardized tests requires convergent thinking. The educational system requires standardized testing to assess schools, to determine funding, and therefore the educational system is geared towards convergent thinking versus divergent. Now what? Now that you know 4 areas where you can help your children develop really necessary skills, let's talk about gaming. So, if you've never played any of these games, I will tell you that they're all very awesome. Not just for kids, but for adults alike. Machi Koro is a game in which you manage a real estate market. They're all by there on the side, by the way. It is your job to be the mayor of a tiny town and select which resources at what time in your financial strategy you'll be able to get to the goal before the other people do. This requires cost-benefit analysis. This requires strategy planning. There's no one way to win the game. There isn't. There's no right answer. Either you get to the goal before other people do or you don't. Catan is another strategy game that's a bit more advanced than Machi Koro, and it's open-ended. Here is your village, there is your road. Here's a sheep, a piece of wood, a rock, and a brick. How do you conquer the island before other people do? There is no clearly defined linear progression of the game. Notice Monopoly is not on here. Which way do you travel in Monopoly? Forward around the board in a square on the same properties everybody. And there is room for strategy, but it's quite limited. It's very linear. Some games are linear, and that does not help with the executive function. 5 minutes. All right. Other ideas, playing cards is great. Scrabble is a wonderful vocabulary building and divergent thinking exercise. You've got 7 letters. How many different words can you make from these letters? And on this board, how many different places could you put your word for an optimal outcome? I'm not copying out, and I'm not trying to give you an easy way to homeschool. But when you do your research and you look at, for example, the Harvard Children's Center of Psychology, all of their recommendations for developing the executive function are games. Board games, sports games, physical games, hand clapping games. They're all games because these are the activities, there is no worksheets for executive function, that help your child grow the analytical thinking that they need to succeed as adults. Now, imaginative play is super critical. You give your kid a box, and if you give them enough time, there is no limit to how many things that they could build out of a cardboard box. They have to decide what steps they want to take. They have to decide what materials they want to use. They have to decide, well, I accidentally cut it off. Maybe I'll turn it into a fish instead. They have to have backup plans. They have to have frustration tolerance. So imaginative play is a wonderful place where children get to exercise and combine lots of different executive function skills. Then we have chores, because good adults are responsible adults. If you think of human psychology across the spectrum between responsibility and entitlement, entitlement is the idea that the world owes you. I deserve this. It's mine. I deserve respect. I deserve my clothes ironed by somebody else. I'm the princess. You guys clean up after me. Compare that with responsibility. No, I think I need to actually put my own food in my own mouth and maybe even chew it by myself. I need to take responsibility for my own academic success. I need to make sure I'm the one who prepares for the job. If I failed the test, it's because I need to study more, not because the teacher didn't like me. There's a difference in approach when we look at that. Now, another good way to do this is to allow your children to pursue skills, as long as they're halal, even if you have no interest in them, even if you don't think they don't have any significance towards a future career. You might say to your son, well, son, I'm not sure if baking is a good career profession. So what? Let him bake, because that means he's developing decision-making skills and follow-through and taking responsibility for his failure or success in a low-risk environment. It's actually really hard to burn the house down. Now, allow children to manage their own money, not yours, their money. Give them their money. If they lose it, they will learn the value of keeping their wallet where they can see it. If they spend it all, they will learn the value of planning next time. You have to give the kids the opportunity to, again, with supervision and help, develop the same skills that they need for adulthood before they get there. It's like practicing kung fu. You don't do it when someone's about to attack you. You do it long before then, and you build it up in safe spaces, and maybe one day you're in a dark alley and someone tries to mug you and you kung fu them and tie them into a little tiny pretzel knot. That's the time to use the skill, but the time to master the skill came way before that. Now, the last thing is self-scheduling. In homeschooling, you have this wonderful thing. You don't have to adhere to other people's schedules. You can allow your children to make their own. I tell my kids, you need to finish all your homeschooling activities by 12. How do you plan on getting there? My daughter, who is smart, and mashallah, they're all smart, has started setting her alarm clock for 8:30 now, because she's realized that if she doesn't finish by 12, then she doesn't get the bonus that comes with on-time finishing. My little one is still at 11:30 going, ah, and like pulling out books, and you know what? She hasn't quite figured it out yet, but she will. She will learn how to manage her time. My eldest has started doing components of his homeschooling the night before they're due. His daily work he is doing the day before I'm expecting him to do it. And I did not suggest this. I did not ask for this. He has simply discovered that if he has free time in the afternoon and he does some of his work, he can wake up in the morning and take it a bit easier and be done earlier. This was an executive decision that he made about his own time, and I did not make it for him. All right, last slide. Allow boredom. Boredom is beautiful. Boredom is important. Boredom is awful, especially when you hear for the 7 millionth time, I'm bored. Great. I was born before the internet existed. And what happens in boredom, in that blank, horrendous darkness, is that sparks will start to happen. A child sitting in a room with nothing to do and no furniture and no paper and no pens can start spinning in circles. How many times do we see kids spinning in circles because they have nothing else? They're alleviating their own boredom. And if you have nothing to do but read a book, you'll read a book. And if you've read it 5 times, maybe you'll rewrite the ending chapter because you didn't like it. Boredom is really important because if you pack your children's day telling them what to think, what to do, and how to decide their time and their future, they will never have the opportunity to make the decisions that they must make when they are adults. That is the end of my presentation, and how much time do we have for Q&A? Good question. So with regards to screen time, not all screen time is created equal. Some screen time is like eating candy. It's delicious and it's tasty, but it has no nutritional value. And you might allow your kids to have treats, but certainly not very big ones, and certainly not a never-ending series of treats. Watching random videos of some person open a toy, who's an adult, and I don't know why they're opening these toys, it's entertainment screen time. It is entertainment. They are passively receiving stuff. Watching cartoons is passive entertainment. There's also edutainment. The children playing coding games is not the same thing as the children watching YouTube videos of toy unboxings. The children playing Minecraft and building virtual machines using engineering components within a virtual world is not entertainment, it is edutainment. So that's an important distinction. My kids get 40 minutes of entertainment screen time a day. If they don't do their homeschooling, they don't get their time for the day. If they finish early, they get 5 extra minutes. But if a kid says by 2 o'clock, I don't want to do it, then I'm like, all right, have a seat, you're going to do it. We're not rolling it forward for tomorrow. We're not writing it off. You're going to do it now. And if you don't finish, you're going to do the same work tomorrow, plus tomorrow's work. And we're just going to sit here until you complete it. And you don't need to yell and scream as long as you realize you're smarter, bigger, and more patient than your children are. So I hope that answered your question. Any other questions? So the question was, how do you balance including both convergent and divergent thinking when obviously some people lean towards more of the other? Convergent thinking is covered by most of your standard academics. You do need to level up. Teaching your children logic, critical thinking, and the recognition of cognitive biases is a wonderful way to really up their convergent thinking skills. There's a book over on that table called the Book of Bad Arguments, the Illustrated Book of Bad Arguments, and we actually teach critical thinking in the co-op. So that's how we're leveling up convergent thinking skills. Coding is a convergent thinking skill. So there are ways you can level up. Divergent thinking happens more casually than you'd assume. Let's say you have to go to a picnic at the park and you tell your kid, go get dressed. What do you want to wear to the picnic? You're allowing them to exercise their executive function. They come back wearing a winter coat and mittens and a pair of rain boots. And you're like, do you think that you'll be able to play easily in the park with that? You are asking them to exercise visualizing outcomes. If you go to the park like that and it's really hot, what can you do about it? Now you're asking them to plan for failure. Now you're asking them to troubleshoot, which is also a function of these executive functions. Well, if it gets too hot, I guess I could take it off. Okay, what do you plan on wearing beneath that? Maybe I should also pack a t-shirt. That sounds like a good idea. Which one do you want to get? Or if they're adamant that, no, I'm going to wear this winter coat, I'm not wearing anything underneath of it, and we're going to the park to play with this, then as long as you make it clear that, all right, I respect your decision, I don't think that you're going to enjoy it much, but I want to let you know that we're not going to come home early if you feel hot. I'm sorry, because that wouldn't be fair to other people. And then you allow your child to be frustrated with their own decision. This is divergent thinking in terms of planning their outcomes, and it's exercising executive function, frustration tolerance, and emotional intelligence in allowing them to make decisions even when they're awful, even when they're ridiculous. It's okay. And we overmanage and over-control children all the time. No, don't get that haircut. All right, my time is up. We overmanage, don't overmanage. Jazakallah khair.